Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. beat Jake Paul. My support is with Chavez Jr.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I would consider him a boxer for sure because, you know, he's faced the real boxer in Tommy Fury. And even though he's fighting a lot of MMA fighters and beating them, but he's putting the work in.
Nobody saw this coming. Not the fans, not the analysts, and definitely not the boxing purists who've spent the last 4 years rolling their eyes at the very idea of Jake Paul being anything more than a clout-chasing outsider. But now, here we are, staring at a reality where the YouTuber turned fighter just beat a former world champion, and the entire combat sports world is either stunned, suspicious, or silently reconsidering everything they thought they knew. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., yes, the son of that Julio, the living Mexican legend, walked into that ring with more experience, more pedigree, and more to prove than any opponent Jake has ever faced, and yet, by the final bell, it was Jake whose hand was raised, Jake who controlled the tempo, Jake who looked like the composed professional, and that moment, frozen in disbelief, has triggered an avalanche of reaction from boxing royalty, trainers, journalists, and legends of the sport who can't seem to agree on one thing. Was this the night Jake Paul became a real boxer, or just another weird glitch in the simulation? Because what happened in that ring wasn't a fluke. It wasn't some overhyped exhibition with novelty gloves or a tired MMA fighter cashing a check. It was a real bout, sanctioned, scored, and undeniably won, and the fallout since has been loud, divided, and absolutely fascinating. Some pros are giving Jake his flowers, saying he fought smart, picked his shots, and earned the victory fair and square. Others are calling the whole thing embarrassing, claiming Chavez was never serious, never trained, and never cared. But whatever side they land on, one thing's clear. This fight changed the conversation, and today we're breaking down exactly how. This is Boxing Pros React to Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And trust me, the takes are spicy. There wasn't a knockout, no wild haymaker, no viral fall. But the impact still hit just as hard. When the judges' scorecards were read, split decision, Jake Paul, the internet didn't just react, it detonated. Not because Jake landed the perfect punch, but because he'd done something nobody thought he had the gas tank, skill set, or sheer nerve to pull off. Beat a real boxer. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., once WBC middleweight champion, son of the most iconic figure in Mexican boxing history, walked out of that ring with his head low and his name a little dimmer. It wasn't just a loss on his record, it was a transfer of legitimacy. Not in the eyes of hardcore purists, perhaps, but to the casual fan? The tide turned that night. In the opening rounds, Jake didn't look like an influencer dabbling in danger. He looked composed, pacing measured, guard tight. His jab kept Chavez at bay while his footwork circled cautiously, never overreaching, never panicking. And Chavez, though technically the more seasoned fighter, looked flat, passive. Some would say disinterested. Others would say undertrained. Either way, the crowd could feel the shift by round 3. This wasn't the mismatch they expected. No one really expected Jake to outbox him over 8 rounds. And yet he did. Body shots landed, combinations got through. Chavez's counters lacked bite, his timing off. Jake, meanwhile, seemed to grow into the ring with each round, shaking off the clown label that's followed him since the Nate Robinson knockout and showing, perhaps for the first time, a hint of ring IQ. By the time it went to the cards, the arena was split between disbelief and slow-building respect. When the announcer read Jake Paul as the winner, there were boos, but also stunned silence. Then came the clips, the memes, the tweets. Pros, trainers, journalists, former champs. Everybody had something to say. Some were furious. This is what boxing's become? Others were surprised. He actually boxed smart. But the loudest reaction came not from any single voice, but from the collective gasp that echoed across social media, news outlets, and sports podcasts. Jake Paul, the YouTuber, had just beaten the son of a legend in a real sanctioned boxing match. It wasn't a knockout, but it was a cultural one. But how did Jake Paul pull this off? For all the trash talk and spectacle that comes with every Jake Paul fight, what went down against Chavez Jr. didn't happen by accident. It wasn't a lucky punch or a fluke decision. It was the result of something most of his critics still don't want to admit. The man trains like a professional, not like a celebrity playing fighter, like someone who eats, sleeps, and breathes boxing. Jake's training camp this time around was quiet, tightly controlled, and focused on one thing: outlasting and outmaneuvering a man who, for all his baggage, once stood at the top of the sport. He brought in sharp sparring partners. He leaned into endurance. He worked on minimizing wasted motion, tightening up his combinations, and developing a jab that wasn't just for show, but could actually control range. And more importantly, he studied Chavez Jr.'s habits, his tendency to coast through fights, the way he leaves himself open when he starts swinging wide, the mental lapses that creep in when pressure builds. Meanwhile, Chavez Jr. was dealing with a very different set of circumstances. Whispers from his camp suggested a lack of intensity, reports surfacing of missed sessions, inconsistent conditioning, and even weight issues in the lead-up to the fight. It's the same pattern that's followed him for years, a man blessed with a legendary name, cursed by his own inconsistency. And that inconsistency was the crack Jake Paul targeted from the start. There were moments in the fight where Jake's discipline was obvious. He didn't overextend. He didn't rush in. He absorbed pressure without panicking, circled out of corners instead of trading, and picked his shots, especially to the body. His jab, often criticized in earlier fights as slow or predictable, had snap. His lead hand set traps, and when Chavez tried to bully him on the ropes, Jake clinched or rolled under, then reset in the center. It wasn't a masterclass, but it was controlled, clean, and effective. And for a fighter with barely a dozen rounds against actual boxers under his belt, it showed more than just potential. It showed composure. Boxing analysts like Chris Algieri and even legends like Roy Jones Jr. have said it before: discipline beats talent when talent doesn't work. And in this case, Jake brought discipline. He brought respect for the sport. That's what so many fans and fighters noticed. Not that he won, but how he fought to win. Yes, Chavez Jr. underperformed, but Jake still had to step in there and keep his head while facing a man with decades of fighting muscle memory, a granite chin, and dangerous hands when motivated. Jake didn't just survive, he led. That's why the boxing world was forced to lean in. Not because Jake's the next champ, but because somehow the kid who made his name on viral videos just beat a former world champion by doing exactly what every coach begs their fighter to do: show up, train hard, stick to the plan. And he did.
If he would have been doing a lot more in the early rounds than he did in the later rounds, I think he would have pulled it out.
When the fight ended and the decision was announced, the boxing world split right down the middle. Not just fans, pros, real fighters, champions, legends. Some gave Jake Paul a respectful nod. Others rolled their eyes like they'd just watched a circus act win an Olympic medal, but no one stayed quiet. Ryan Garcia was one of the first to speak out. He tweeted, "Respect to Jake. Say what you want, but he beat a real boxer. That's not easy." Coming from a guy with serious knockout power and a deep understanding of ring dynamics, that kind of acknowledgement hit different. Even fighters who once dismissed Jake as a joke started changing their tone. A few called it surprising, others called it strategic. Then came the critic. Jermall Charlo didn't hold back, posting, "Chavez ain't been serious in years. That wasn't a win worth celebrating." And he wasn't alone. Several pros from the old guard chimed in with the same sentiment. Chavez Jr. isn't what he used to be. He's not his father. He's not elite. So beating him? Not impressive. More like opportunistic. Floyd Mayweather's camp stayed silent, but analysts close to him hinted that the fight was more about timing than talent. Still, there was a noticeable shift from some of the more respected voices in the sport. Andre Ward, a man known for his strategic brilliance, commented in an interview that while Jake still has a long way to go, he looked composed, he stuck to the fundamentals, and he made good decisions. That's more than I can say for a lot of young fighters. Teddy Atlas, always brutally honest, broke it down on his podcast, "Look, I'm not crowning Jake Paul, but the kid's improving. You don't do what he just did without putting in the work." Chavez Jr. might be faded, sure, but Jake still had to show up and win those rounds. He earned that. Let's not pretend he didn't. It wasn't just boxers weighing in. MMA fighters, many of whom Jake has called out in the past, also had strong takes. Nate Diaz scoffed in a live stream, shaking his head and saying, "Fight me next. Let's see what's real." Michael Bisping, on the other hand, acknowledged Jake's cardio and patience, saying, "I thought he was gonna gas. He didn't. I'll give him that." The comments weren't all praise or all hate. But the volume of reactions on podcasts, interviews, live streams, Instagram stories proved one thing. Jake Paul has made himself impossible to ignore. What's striking isn't just that fighters are talking about him, it's how they're talking. Some are backhanded, some are impressed, some are furious, but all of them are reacting with the kind of energy usually reserved for title fights or legacy-defining moments. Why? Because Jake Paul did what nobody thought he could do, and whether they admit it or not, it rattled the industry just a little. He beat a man who once held a world title. That's not nothing. And the reactions, both good and bad, prove that Jake Paul is no longer just a social media phenomenon crashing the boxing party. He's inside the house now, and everyone's got an opinion.
Boy, there's real danger of a clash of heads here, too. They're both just...
Oh, nice uppercut. Chavez thought he was going to the body, and he went up top.
The question came fast, loud, and from every angle. Okay, but does this finally make Jake Paul a real boxer? And it's not a throwaway debate anymore. It's a legit conversation in gyms, press rooms, and post-fight panels. Because after what happened in the ring with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., even the harshest critics were forced to reevaluate what they thought they knew. The Jake Paul of 2021 was raw, tense, full of power, but clunky on his feet. He relied on overhands and aggression. He stalked opponents without setting traps, and he got away with it because he was fighting guys who didn't know how to box. Former basketball players, retired MMA fighters, the occasional journeyman with a padded record. But the Jake Paul who stepped into the ring against Chavez Jr. looked different. Not flashy, not elite, but controlled, composed, and most importantly, intentional. His jab was sharp. His footwork was deliberate. His defense wasn't just reactive, it was planned. He rolled underhooks. He pivoted instead of backing straight up. He used clinches wisely and didn't burn himself out trying to win every exchange. He boxed like a guy who'd spent the last year not chasing headlines, but drilling the basics day after day. Watch the tape. You'll see it in how he controls distance, how he feints before throwing, how he manages the clock. He's not just trying to win on power anymore. He's trying to win rounds. That's what real fighters do. And his body's caught up too. He's stronger, sure, but more balanced. There's less wasted motion. His gas tank, which used to collapse by the fourth round, held steady deep into the fight. No panic, no sloppiness, just rhythm. And that rhythm? It's what separates fighters from entertainers. Now, is he ready for a title run? Number, not even close. But here's the truth most pros don't want to admit publicly. Jake Paul is doing what a lot of young fighters in their first 10 fights are still struggling to do. Listen, adapt, and improve. He's built a team that doesn't just hype him, they coach him. BJ Flores, Shane Mosley, even input from guys like Julian Love, all shaping a fighter who's actually starting to respect the craft, not just the cameras, not just the storyline, the work. And that's what's bothering the old heads the most. Because if Jake Paul had just stayed a joke, stayed clumsy and easy to dismiss, everyone could have moved on. But now, he's not only winning, he's getting better. He's entering the phase where his skill is catching up to his ambition. And that means he's crossing a line out of celebrity novelty and into professional threat. The boxing world isn't panicking, but they're definitely watching now, not out of curiosity, out of caution. Because if Jake Paul keeps improving like this, the question won't be, is he a real boxer anymore? It'll be, who's ready to risk their reputation fighting him? If Jake's stock went up, Chavez Jr.'s crashed straight through the floor. For years, he's lived in the shadow of his father, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., a living legend, a warrior with granite fists and heart. But Jr.? He's been the cautionary tale. Talented, yes, but inconsistent, unmotivated. A fighter who always seemed to have the tools, but never the hunger. Against Jake Paul, it wasn't just that he lost. It was how he lost. Flat-footed, slow to react, throwing punches like he was just trying to get through it. You could feel it. Even in his corner, there wasn't urgency. There was resignation, as if everyone knew this was the end of something. Chavez Jr. had every opportunity to shut the circus down, to restore his name, to silence the critics. Instead, he added fuel to their fire. Boxing is brutal, not just in the ring, but in legacy. And now, the narrative around him is shifting fast. The man who was given everything and gave almost nothing back. The pros aren't defending him, they're distancing themselves. Because in this sport, there's nothing worse than wasted potential, except maybe losing to the guy who came from YouTube.
I don't think he win like 8 rounds. I think he win 6 or 7 rounds, and I win like 3 or 4 rounds.
What did he tell you after the fight in the ring? You guys talked?
And I'm tough, and good fight, whatever.
Junior, how his punch? How is it? Is it good? Can that help him out in a world title fight, or what do you think?
He had a good punch. Good punch.
Now that Jake Paul's beaten a former world champion, whether you think it was legit or not, the question hanging in the air is simple. What now? Because beating Chavez Jr. is one thing. Doing it again, against someone younger, sharper, and hungry, that's the next mountain. Names are flying around already. Tommy Fury is back on the board. Their last fight was messy, awkward, and unfinished. A rematch now, with Jake more polished and Tommy desperate to restore his own name, could be explosive. It's the obvious pick, but maybe too obvious.
Good, and 3, 2, 1, turn around, and just stare down the camera. Perfect. And relax there. Okay, the next one.
Then there's Nate Diaz, always looming, always marketable. And if Diaz decides to take it seriously, it's a guaranteed war. But again, it's not a boxer. It's an entertainer's match. And Jake knows that road only goes so far now. If he wants respect, he has to fight real fighters.
Tries to fit that right hand in around the guard. Maybe I'm wrong here, Darren, but I would like to see him go through the guard with that right hand. Straighten it out and put it down the middle. And the left hook.
Some are calling for someone like Vito Mielnicki Jr., a legit up-and-comer, fast, technical, and dangerous. Others say throw him in with a ranked gatekeeper, someone with nothing to lose and everything to prove.
Oh, he comes right in with a lead uppercut.
You're starting to see Mielnicki starting to lose his cool.
Oh, and meanwhile, look at the cut that's opened up around the left eye.
But whatever the name, the stakes are different now. Jake has crossed into new territory. Every fight from here on out isn't just about winning, it's about proving it wasn't a fluke. So where does this leave us? Jake Paul just did the unthinkable. He beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., a former world champion with a name that echoes through boxing history. And no matter how you slice it, whether you think Chavez was washed or simply uninterested, Jake showed up, stuck to the plan, and left with the win. That's more than most expected. And now? The conversation's changed. Because this wasn't an exhibition, this wasn't a gimmick. This was a real fight, sanctioned, judged, and executed under real pressure. And the pros, love him or hate him, are starting to pay attention. Some are giving him respect, others are calling for his downfall, but none of them are ignoring him anymore. And that's the thing about boxing. You can't fake rounds, you can't fake gas tanks, you can't fake heart. You either have it or you don't. And on this night, Jake Paul showed just enough of all three to keep climbing. Whether this was a peak or just the beginning, we'll find out soon enough. But one thing is clear, he's not just crashing the party anymore. He's taking a seat at the table. Make sure to subscribe for more breakdowns, pro reactions, and real talk after the fights. This ride's not over.